Welcome back to another DKKS movie breakdown. My name is Charlie Cannon.
My name's Ian Scott.
And we are DKKS Productions. Shaquille, please tell our fine, beautiful, lovely, delicious viewers exactly what movie we will be breaking down for them today.
Well, as you all know, since I know every single one of you, every single 10 trillion of you watched our last movie breakdown, we are going to be breaking down everybody's favorite 2019 movie, Honeyboy.
I'm super excited for this one. As I mentioned in the last one, this is the first film that we're reviewing that I had not seen prior to when we watched it for the breakdown. So this is going to be kind of a fresh take from myself. No need for a third party for a fresh take because you're getting it from me straight from the source.
I'm just going to go ahead and beat it. Then I'm going to leave.
I'm waiting.
Oh!
Alright, so yeah, no, this was a... You'll learn my thoughts about the movie, but I'm super stoked to talk about it.
I'm very stoked to talk about it as well. Yeah. So, what we're going to do, as per usual, we are going to grab a cigar, we are going to grab a drink, and we are going to buckle the F up, Buttercup. Okay, so tonight our drink of choice is going to be a lovely bottle of Angel's Envy Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. And I think, in my opinion, Kentucky whiskey is a lot better than Tennessee whiskey.
That is a hot take. I've tried this before, haven't I?
I don't think so.
But you've spoken highly of this.
I've spoken very
highly
highly of it, yeah.
Cool. I keep getting the names Angel's Envy and Ancient Age confused.
Because they are both... I can't even joke about it. Angel's Envy is top-notch. Ancient Age is like bottom of the barrel.
So, the smoke of choice this fine evening, I picked up some Sons of Anarchy Redwood Original cigars. Have a look at that. Now, the thought process that went into picking this is I went on my lunch break today to the cigar shop, and these were the only ones below $30. So that's about it. But also, Sons of Anarchy seems like a pretty cool show. I haven't actually watched it, but I intend on it. If that
one day.
Maybe.
Possibly.
The watch list is rather long. We should delve into breaking down TV shows eventually.
Oh, I've thought about that as well.
Yeah. Sons of Anarchy may be somewhere on the list, and maybe we can bring these back around if they deliver. Hopefully, these are a tad bit better than our good friend Tatiana, because that stuff was nasty as hell. But yeah, I'm super excited for these, super excited for this. In fact, shall we go ahead and test the waters with our envious angels?
Alright, let's have that crisp pop.
Ooh, that was crisp.
Quite disgusting.
And it was a pop. Crisp.
Actually, hold on.
Oh, smells like Corona.
Yes. That is just one giant bottle of COVID.
My good giggity god.
I'm a righty. I cannot pour left-handed. I can't pour right-handed, apparently, either.
You can't pour.
I cannot.
Oh! Beautiful. That is... Let's take a look at his craftsmanship real quick. Well, gosh dang. That's about as even as you get right there. I admire that handiwork. Now, let me take one more.
That's some good shit.
Delicious. Shall
we?
Alright. To Honeyboy.
To Honeyboy.
Give me a second. You know what? I'm a big fan of this already. Right. Because you know what? We've had some bourbon on this show, some whiskey on this show that goes down smooth, that, you know, that initial taste is really good, for lack of a better word. Good. It's a little Wall Street reference. But this one, typically with those, actually I can say with almost all of them besides this, there's that afterburn. That's why I wanted to wait for a second. This one comes with the smoothness, with very little burn afterwards, which I can appreciate because the burn hurts.
It doesn't feel very good, but
Yeah.
with Angel's Envy, it doesn't do you dirty like that. Because, you know, it's called the Devil's... What's the opposite of that?
I don't know. I was thinking in my head. I was like,
usually I can come up with shit like that, like the antithesis
the
of
Devil's
things. But
Pride?
you're right.
Maybe.
The Devil's... Satan's Pride.
Try it out. No, that's absolutely delicious. I'm envious of
The Angel.
We're gonna get the drinks poured up. We're gonna get the cigars cut up, lit up, and then we're gonna jump directly into the deep end of Honeyboy.
Yeah, I can already tell I'm gonna have a head buzz from Hades from this fucking cigar. It's gonna make me expectorate like a bitch.
Expectorate. I'm gonna be spitting like a bitch.
I got some news for you, Lieutenant Dan.
What?
That's what expectorate means.
No, it isn't. Ow! All right. Acting.
All right, let's chat about the acting in this movie because there is not one single performance that does not there is not one single performance that disappoints. Every single one delivers. So first of all, Noah Jupe, who plays young Otis. A little bit of backstory, because if you haven't watched the movie or you don't really know what the movie's about, Shia LaBeouf wrote the movie based around his childhood, living with his father while he was on Even Stevens, and it cuts between him at that age and him at the age of like 22, when Shia LaBeouf was really going through like a very weird time in his life.
It was around the Transformers.
Yeah, around the Transformers era, yeah. But Noah Jupe plays young Otis, and I mean, this kid is like a better actor than I will ever be.
I agree with that.
Thanks. He really he nails the way that Shia LaBeouf was at that age. I think, you know, there are parts that we see him on set for Even Stevens, and I watched the movie and was like, oh my god, I'm watching Even Stevens right now. But the amount of like dedication that he put into this role for such a young actor is incredible, and the places that he went to are places that I can't even imagine going to. And I think that, you know, the casting director, the director, and probably even Shia LaBeouf had a really big part in, you know, casting who was gonna play him essentially. And there are parts in the movie where this kid just is a powerhouse actor. You know, the part towards the end when he's talking to his dad, who's played by Shia LaBeouf. He says, "You wouldn't be here if I didn't pay you." And, you know, Shia LaBeouf's character starts to like break down because of that internal realization that, you know, he's right. This guy's a deadbeat father, but, you know, he brings us a level of maturity, I think, to such a young character. A character who wants desperately to have a father, because he has a friend, a shitty friend, but he has a friend. You know, his father isn't a father. His father is more like a friend to him. Yeah. And I think he just desperately wants to be a normal kid. To have a father figure who will, you know, discipline him and will put him on the right track. And I think Shia LaBeouf really had a breakthrough mentally in writing this part, writing this whole movie, but specifically writing this part for this character. The girl who plays the shy girl,
the one that lives in the complex with him.
Yeah, who's like a prostitute. I think it's like kind of hinted that she's a prostitute. Yeah. Their relationship is so beautiful, and I told you this when we watched it, that I think in real life, I have no way of knowing this for sure, but I think in real life, Shia LaBeouf did pay her to have sex with him when he was like 12 or whatever, and he wrote a scene where it looks like they're about to do it. He pays her, and then he gets up and leaves. And I think that is what Shia LaBeouf wished had happened. He wished he had never had sex with her. He wishes that he just had that innocent relationship with this kind of mother figure. Because really, she is the complete antithesis of his father. She's loving, she's caring, she takes care of him when he's sad. She, at one point, asks him if he's cold and, like, snuggles up next to him. And there's a scene when they're in bed together, having fallen asleep, and the embrace that they're in is just very mother and child-like. It's so beautiful. She does a wonderful job, and she really doesn't have a very big part of the movie, but she delivered, and that is a true testament to the talent of that actress, because taking such a small part and making it so memorable is incredible. Now, Shia LaBeouf, who plays his father, essentially, I don't even know where to begin. Like, I don't even know where to start. I mean, obviously, having grown up with his father, he knows how his father was. He knew his father's mannerisms. So the physicality was there, but the mentality. How do you get into that mentality? When Shia wrote this, he discovered that he had PTSD from the time that he spent with his father. So how can someone just, like, actively go back to the point in their life when they received all that trauma and like willingly just throw themselves back into it? It's Shia LaBeouf. I mean, I've always thought Shia LaBeouf was an incredible actor. You know, despite what anyone says, I've always respected the man in this craft. But I mean, this really solidified him as one of my probably top 10 favorite actors of all time. Can you take over, because I don't know what to say about this.
And it's hard to talk about the rest of the cast when you do got Shia LaBeouf in this film, and it's such a personal project for him.
Yeah.
You know, something that he wrote, something that he experienced, and now something that he's helping bring to life. To, you know, you can argue. Usually when you go into writing something, you have a reason in mind. Either it's to get something across, a message, or to tell a story that can inspire people in a certain way. So he had to dive deep in himself to find a reason to bring this to life as well, which I think probably was not the easiest thing in the entire world to do. But I think they even mentioned at a certain point in the film when he's in therapy, when he's like 22, or when he's in the rehab center, and he's talking about, they mentioned that he's displaying symptoms of PTSD. I think that's probably the point when he came to terms with that he decided he wanted to write this movie, where he knew that he had to go visit his father again. You get the scene at the end of the movie where he says, "I'm gonna write a movie about you." And so I do want to say that Otis is the name of Shia LaBeouf in the movie. Not his character's name, but like him, the little kid Otis, and then
the little kid who's supposed to be Shia LaBeouf, his name's Otis.
Right. He did a great job, and the guy that played him as the older Otis did a great job too, even though he's in less of the movie. You look at the guy and you watch his mannerisms and stuff.
Yeah.
He really seems like Shia LaBeouf. He seems like the Shia LaBeouf you see in interviews and on the red carpet and stuff. And I gotta say, I can admit that, you know, I went through a period in my life when I didn't like Shia LaBeouf. I thought that his ego was a little too big. He was doing that stuff where he wore the paper bag on his head on the red carpet, like, I'm not famous anymore.
I do remember that, yeah.
You see stuff like this, and it's easy to judge at first sight, and then, you know, it's something that we can kind of take and use with the people we see on a day-to-day basis. Don't judge too much before you kind of understand exactly what they went through, where they come from. I had no idea back when Shia LaBeouf was already making a ton of money. He was still living in this crummy, rundown motel with his not deadbeat because he's around, but his neglectful and irresponsible father.
Yeah.
It just shows a lot about why he acts the way he does, and how throughout time he's matured and he's come to terms with what's happened, and he feels that it's an appropriate story to tell, to get across. And at no point in this story, also, I want to mention, no point in the movie from beginning to end does it say this is based on Shia LaBeouf's life. You don't know that unless you do the research. That's correct, right?
Yeah, it doesn't say that in the movie.
So I think that also shows the level of selflessness that he went into this project with. Yeah, I don't know what to say about Shia LaBeouf's performance itself. It's incredible. To dive into the mentality of a man who put you through so many traumatic experiences, who shaped you into a man that you're not super proud to be. You're in rehab because you have PTSD because of this guy. I think that shows a lot on his part, and I think that it also shows, especially the scene at the end, the relationship that he still has with his father. I like that he was able to sit down with him and go, I'm going to make a movie out of you. And it's not like the whole movie's just talking bad about his dad either.
Yeah.
You see them having good times, you see them having really bad times. It's very honest, it's very truthful, and the performances themselves are very honest and very truthful. Just an absolutely it's a master class of acting.
That's a very good way to put it. I mean, kind of going off of what you said about his father, there are points in the movie where his father displays genuine concern for Otis.
Right.
The first one that immediately comes to my mind is Otis says, "Dad, I want to go to this baseball game. Me and AJ are going to go see the Dodgers play." And his dad's like, "Okay, yeah, that'll be fun. Like, here's some money. Go have some fun. Who's going to drive you to the game? I can't drive you both because I have a motorcycle. We don't have a car. So I can't drive you. Who's going to drive you?" And he says, "My friend AJ is going to drive me." And he says, No, AJ is going to the game with you, but who's driving you? Because AJ's only 14 and his parents are in another part of the state. So who's driving you? Like, I mean, that's a very valid concern for his well-being. So I think, like, that it doesn't just, like, show my dad's a shitty person, 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 but, like, in the big picture, he does care.
Right. And
I think that's a really, good moment.
And I think...
And another part that, I think genuinely shows that he cares for his son is towards the very beginning, he picks him up from the set of Even Stevens, and they're riding on his bike through the streets of LA, and Otis is kind of like falling asleep, kind of like losing his tight grip on the back of a motorcycle, and the dad just kind of, headbutts him like that to wake him up, because obviously he doesn't want his kid to die.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, in acting school, how many times do you think you heard from a director that you have to listen to your castmate? Yeah. On stage, you need to listen. Yeah,
it's half of acting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is just like a testament to, these actors who are open to not being locked into a certain choice or a certain line, reading or whatever. They listened to each other. They had an experience with each other. They weren't...
Yeah, I saw that in the last second.
They weren't acting. They were lit. Do you mind? I'm trying to shoot a video here,
God bless.
Anyway, they weren't acting. They were experiencing. The best piece of acting, the best piece of directing I've ever received was from a professor in college who, like, one of my first days of classes pretty much just said, don't act, just exist, just be. Mm-hmm. Shout out Peter Savage.
The best.
An idol of mine, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think that's what they did in this movie, which is why the acting is so good, because I feel like they're not acting.
Right. No, I agree. It seems incredibly real. And I feel like part of that has to do with the director, which we'll get into in just a minute, but also with Shia himself. Because I feel like he had a lot of input in choices, and I feel like his interaction with the kid that played Otis, I feel like that was they probably had a very honest relationship. He was very... Because, honestly, as if I was his age and I was doing some of the stuff he was doing on camera, it would have been very eye-opening because, I wasn't exposed to a lot of that growing up. So I feel like it was a very honest experience. And going back to what you were saying about those scenes that you talked about, now it shows that the dad cared. I think it also shows that Shia still cares about his dad, that he's willing to portray him like that. And it's not like oh, my dad bullied me, I don't like him, I'm going to write him very bad. It's a very...
Honest. It's
honest is the word of the video, so...
For sure. Kind of like seamless
was the word of John Wick. Honest is the word of this video. Very honest performances, very honest storytelling, and...
Visceral. Very visceral.
Definitely.
It's heartbreaking. He can tell you. I was snotting like a little bitch.
Yeah, there was a point in the film where it was a very, solemn moment, and I said something to him, and he kind of turned back to me, and he had this string of snot just like hanging. He was, and it kind of took me out of the moment a little bit. I admitted I laughed at a sad part in the film, but it was just to this guy.
I had a little bit too much of this that night.
Yeah, he had a little too much.
Just a little bit too much of that.
Yeah.
I was very hungover the next day.
But yeah, no. So that's how I feel about the acting.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's all we really need to say about the acting.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Watching that, as actors, you learn by doing, but you also learn just as much by watching.
Right.
And I feel like I've learned a lot by watching this movie. So.
Yep. And I want to say,
if you're an actor or an aspiring, if you want to fuck me, just fuck me. If you are an actor or you are an aspiring actor, watch this movie. I guarantee you will learn something about it.
Right. And just one last thing I want to say. I always talk about how good editing is editing you don't notice. In really good borderline art house films like this, actually, yeah, in films that requires a lot of acting, really good acting is acting that you kind of forget you're watching somebody play a character.
Yeah.
You feel like you're watching the real life.
Absolutely.
So, once again, brings it around to honesty. A toast to
all the incredible actors, because every single one was perfect.
Yep, exactly. Boom. Cheers. That was the lamest of goddamn. All right.
Because that was a lot better.
Directing. All right, so
nobody cares. Moving on.
Editing.
Nobody cares. Moving on. Cinematography.
Nobody cares. Moving on. Right. Next movie.
Princess Diaries.
All right. Directing. All right, so let's hop into it real quick. I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is the first one that we've done that this is my first time viewing it, as opposed to 1.5 million times with the other films that we've done. This is also the first borderline art house film that we've done. I know that Shia a couple years back said that he was done making blockbusters. He only wants to make honest art house films now. I kind of rolled my eyes,
as did I,
to the back of my head and back around when I first heard that. But if it's going to be films like this, I'm totally down for it. I know he's actually done a few blockbusters since then. I know he did Fury. And
he has the Tax Collector that just came out or is coming out.
Right, yeah. So he's, that wasn't completely honest, but he did want to focus on more personal projects. I know that. I imagine this was the main one that he had in mind when he made that statement. I believe the name of this director is pronounced Alma Harel. I may be wrong. It's Israeli. And to be honest, looking at her filmography, there's not much to name. In fact, there's only about 5 or 6 movies that she has directed. A lot of them are very independent films. Films sort of like this. In fact, I think this is probably the highest
not
budget,
very mainstream.
Most mainstream film. Right. The only one that you would hear about, on a regular basis, and it's mainly because of Shia LaBeouf. But oh wow, this is a responsibility to direct this film. When you're directing something that is super personal to one of your main actors, you want to be very delicate with it. You want to be very collaborative about the entire process. Which I'm sure she was, because as we mentioned when we talked about acting, this is a very honest piece. With the directing, there's nothing too grandiose. I will say the most kind of out there thing that's done is it kind of jumps times. You go between Otis at a certain age and Otis when he's younger, and I think that's probably the most extraordinary thing that's done stylistically, at least. It is a stylistic film. There are scenes that are done with very heavy editing and stuff, and I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit. As far as editing goes, though, as far as directing goes, though, I think the biggest task that Alma had at hand was how to push the actors in the right direction. And as we mentioned with the Goonies review, when you're working with young actors, that can be a Herculean, is that how it's pronounced? That can be a Herculean task, just because sometimes you need to grasp, especially when you're working with a child actor that's in a role that requires a certain level of maturity for people that that for a lot of kids they don't really experience enough to be able to grasp that sort of. This kid nailed it though. As we mentioned, he did an absolutely outstanding job, and I feel like that had to do with the direction he was given by Alma and by Shia. When I was watching this, I asked him, I was like, did Shia direct this? Because of how honest everything's felt, I just assumed that the person that was involved in these experiences played a heavy hand, and I still believe that he did. But also, I feel like Alma did a great job probably sitting down with Shia and going over the nitty-gritties, you know, like the very specific details.
Like, kind of like digging in, is like, what did this do to you? Kind of getting very
right. Not
intense.
just what happened here, but how did this affect you, and how should this kid portray that on screen? That is a super difficult task to do with any actors, especially child actors. So props to Alma for that. But you know, we already talked about how fantastic and honest the acting was in this film. When you work on an intimate project like this, I feel like you need to get that across to your actors, or else the film's gonna flop, which this film definitely did not. It probably got about the level of success they expected. They didn't want it to be a blockbuster hit, and I feel like these sort of projects are probably in Alma's wheelhouse. You know, maybe one day we'll see her direct something huge like John Wick or the Usual Suspects that blows up and becomes this classic or cult classic. But with the task that she was given, she absolutely hit a home run. I will say that.
Yeah, and don't get us wrong when we say, oh, she hasn't directed a blockbuster, she's not a good director. She's an incredible director.
Right.
I'd say that, like, she's probably better than half the directors in Hollywood that do make blockbusters. Shout out Michael Bay. There's nothing. Your level of box office, you know, opening weekend has nothing to do with your ability as a director. I think your ability as a director, what makes a good director is how can you make a movie that is meaningful, that is good, that evokes an emotion in someone, as it obviously did in
that makes you snot out of your nose.
I'm telling you, that wasn't her as a director, that was the whiskey!
And her as a director, no discredit to
yeah, no, absolutely. But, no, I think, you know, like, and even if she doesn't make a movie that, never blows up or becomes a cult classic, that's fine. Like, I'll probably, if I ever see another movie that's directed by her, I'll absolutely go and watch it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you were talking about when a director's tasked with making a movie that is seriously personal and meaningful to a specific person. Like, that person, in this case, Shia LaBeouf, has to have complete and utter trust in this director. Because I've had an idea for a movie, and I told a friend of mine, I was like, I want you to direct this. And then he heard me talk about it, and he's like, nah, you have to direct this. This means a lot to you. Because I don't want to direct it and ruin it for you. I want you to make it the way you want to make it, and only you can do it. Right. So I think, you know, Shia really trusted her.
I definitely.
Yeah. I think she's a wonderful director.
I would agree with that. You know, when we talk about directing, a lot of the time we're talking about big sequences that were probably tough to choreograph and all of this and whatnot. I think the directing and the acting in this go hand in hand more than anything else. It was a wonderful collaboration. Very seamless, very honest, and very good, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have much more to say about the directing. Do you have anything?
I just think, again, I'm at a loss for words. You know, this movie has completely blown me away, and I've been thinking for about a week what I'm going to say about this, and I cannot find the words, because
me too.
Every aspect of this movie just really just delivers.
Right.
You know, like, go and watch it. The best way I can put, if I had to describe this movie with, like, a term, it would be beautifully depressing.
I would say the exact same thing. You know, you told me going into this that I would cry watching it, and I was waiting the whole movie. You know, it did definitely evoke emotions out of me. The scene that got me, the scene that actually, you know, brought tears to my eyes, was at the very end when Otis and his dad are riding on the motorcycle.
The
and
first
his dad
time I watched
kinda,
that killed me. Killed me.
you know, if you don't know what we're talking about, this is probably one that we're definitely going to need a spoiler warning beforehand because I doubt a lot of people have seen this film.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler alert.
But there's a scene at the end that, I mean, it's not too much of a spoiler. We've already talked about how his dad and him still, there must be some sort of relationship present. But there's just a scene at the end that not much acting is required. The actors are wearing helmets. I think they're wearing goggles. And they're just riding down the road. And they don't have to say anything. They don't have to do anything. They just, exactly. They exist.
Yeah, but I know exactly the part you're talking about when, because the entire movie we see the father, you know, driving the motorcycle and Otis on the back hugging him, but in the very, like, one of the last scenes, it's Otis driving the motorcycle and his father on the back, and it's kind of, like, I think it's symbolism for, you know, finally he has gained control of his own life, and he has made the effort to forgive his father, and his father has realized, like, I messed up, my son is, like, gonna be, you know, the person he's gonna be because of who he is, not because of who I made him. Right. And there's that beautiful moment where he's, like, there's riding on the back, and the father kind of has his head laying on his back and just kind of, like, hugs him really tight.
You can tell he loves him. I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, I'm tearing up just, like, talking about it.
There it is!
No, and then even in that scene, what really got me with that scene is, like, a car, like, they're driving, and then a car dirties the frame, which means a car passes between the motorcycle with the two of them on it and between the cameras, so they go, and the father's gone.
Yeah.
Like, he's not there anymore. Which I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Right.
But, yeah, I remember the first time I watched it, I was, like, on the couch and just kind of had to go...
Yeah.
Like, I had to, like, breathe for a second because it just hit different, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
I really haven't...
We're kind of at a loss for words with a lot with this film.
This is going to be one of the... I don't even know how to tell you. This is going to be like the breakdown where we just don't know what to say.
Yeah, the whole thing, we're just going to be sitting there like...
The movie was pretty cool.
Alright, but for now, to Alma, thank you for delivering a fantastic, personal, honest rendition. Of a very personal story.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Well done.
Cheers. Alright, let's chat just a little bit about the cinematography. Okay, so the cinematography is great. There's nothing like what I would say stand outish,
yeah.
You know, about it.
I would have used the exact same wording, stand outish. When you were like looking for it, when you were like nothing. I was gonna say stand outish, and then you.
So if
should
you
we
can't,
kill ourselves?
no. If you can't tell, we've known each other for so long, and we're such good friends that like we can legit.
I think we have the same brains.
Honestly, I have proposed a theory that we are twins separated at birth.
Yep. And
that's why we have this weird telepathy. Yep. But you're not interested in that right now. You're interested in the cinematography. The cinematographer's name is actually the very first female cinematographer that we are going to be breaking down so far. And her name was Natasha Breyer. Again, kind of like Alma, she hasn't really done any blockbusters or any mainstream movies. She's done a lot of short films. She's done a lot of indie stuff, which I think is fine. You know, in recent years, I've kind of gained a little bit more of an appreciation for indie films. But the shots that stand out to me in Honeyboy are really the shots just around L.A.
Mm-hmm.
The scenes when they're riding on the motorcycle through L.A., the one of the last shots when they're sitting on the side of the highway smoking a joint. The shots of, at one point, Otis and his father have a very heated disagreement which ends in the father leaving, going to a strip club, doing a whole bunch of drugs, drinking, even though he's been sober for like 4 years or whatever. You know, it was such a bad, you know, argument that it forced him to go and get drunk or whatever, which is heartbreaking whenever you hear something like that. A sober person, an alcoholic, being sober for so long.
And then,
you know,
an argument with a kid can bring that out of you.
Son,
that shows how much you care. Yeah.
So, but after the argument, Otis is like in kind of, I think like a junkyard maybe, or an abandoned lot with some cars, and he's just throwing rocks at the cars. And there's just something about that that's, you know, beautiful. The shots aren't incredibly planned out or choreographed. They're not like a lot of thought went into them. They were probably there on set that day and were like, all right, have fun, throw some rocks at these cars. And like, you know, here's the situation, here's what you're feeling. We'll just let the camera roll, and what we get is what we get, which I think is probably some like the best filmmaking, is when you get the best, you know, scenes in movies when you just let the camera roll.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I think even though there's nothing amazingly over the top about the shots, I think it's just incredibly just beautiful. I think the whole movie was shot really well. It's very simple, you know. You don't have a whole lot of intense, well planned out, specific camera angles like you do in John Wick or whatever. You just say, all right, you frame up nicely here.
Go at it.
Act,
you
know. And I think, you know, probably the shot list was very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Flexible?
Yeah, flexible. It was flexible. It was not set in stone. You know, it's like we have to have this angle in here. We have to have this shot.
Can I?
Yeah,
real quick.
Please.
So
please.
When I said,
for the love of God,
I don't know what to say anymore.
Me either.
When I said flexible, I almost said, I'm not even, you know, for the sake of the beginning of the, I'm not just saying this for this. When I said flexible, I almost said, yeah, flexible, you know, like not set in stone. And then you just came in with the...
Okay, so do you see what we're talking about?
Yeah, you're worried for us? Because I'm worried for us.
And that's not even the weirdest thing that's ever happened to us, believe it or not.
Yeah. DJ, you're involved in that story. I know you watch these videos. Yeah, so I want to say about the cinematography real quick. This is a flick. Once again, I keep mentioning how different this is from the other films that we've done, but this is the most personal art house style film that we've done, where you're gonna watch this movie in the sake. Every movie has an objective, what it wants to evoke out of you, and what it is to you is what it will evoke out of you. This is a very personal film with very intimate feelings and very intimate relationships between the actors, and it's not incredibly stylistic, although there are some stylistic sequences.
And it kind of comes across as intimate.
Right.
That's a good.
Yeah.
That's a good
So
word.
I will say that as far as cinematography goes, it wasn't too much of a task to be the cinematographer of this film. Not taking anything away from Natasha, I mean, she did a really good job. I didn't really think about the cinematography throughout the entire film, really. I guess there are some pretty cool shots. Like, I would say the opening shot's really cool when you first see him standing there and he gets yanked back and you realize he's on the set of this big action film.
Yeah, and how it's kind of like revealed where it looks like you're watching, you know, it looks like you're watching Transformers, and then he gets pulled back on this harness or whatever.
Yeah.
And the smoke clears and you see he's on a movie set.
And they reset and they're about to...
It's kind of like watching the making of this scene in Transformers, which I think is a great opening.
Which also shows to me that I feel that Natasha could probably direct a film, or not direct, but be director of photography for a film like Transformers or a big blockbuster. Mm-hmm. She probably chooses to do films like this. And I want to go back a little bit. Is Alma the first female director we've had as well?
She is.
Okay, so we have a female director and a female cinematographer. The first time that we've really, you know, touched on that. Not that it really makes... It's not a big deal.
But it's nice to, you know,
it's nice to have a little
change of
diversity.
pace.
Sure, yeah. But yeah, no, I feel like she did what she needed to do for this film. Nothing too grandiose, nothing too...
And it's
you
not
know,
that
it
kind of
doesn't
movie either.
it doesn't distract from what the movie is, which is that intimate relationship, feelings, whatever film that I just mentioned a second ago. She does a great job in capturing what needs to be captured. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really don't have much to say about the cinematography because, as I mentioned, there's nothing too spectacular about it, besides the fact that it does exactly what it needs to do.
There's nothing so spectacular about it, but there's something very spectacular about it. If that makes sense to you all.
I'm with you right there.
So, honestly, like with everything else, I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah.
But it was great. I loved it. I love every part about this movie, so I'm going to go ahead and raise a toast. A toast. I'm Sean Connery or something. Well done, Natasha.
Ooh. Editing! Alright. We're going to talk about the editing a little bit in this film. I'm actually going to just read off these names real quick because I don't want to mispronounce them, and I've never heard of them. We have 2 editors for this film. We have Dominic Lapierre and Monica Salazar. Once again, I've looked at the filmography of these 2. There's nothing really to name of note. I'm sure, and I also want to mention for our editor and our director as well, I'm sure if we went back and watched some of these indie films, which neither of us have seen any of them, I would imagine, they're probably something to talk about. They're probably something that we would have a good time breaking down, in fact. Mm-hmm. It's just not anything that rings a bell, really, when you first read the title. I've seen plenty of indie films, this one included, that kind of shook me a little bit, that's kind of surprised me, that, it's not something you hear about on a regular basis, but you watch it and you're like, wow. But that's mainly the kind of films that these people are working on, at least as editors. They also work behind the camera in several different aspects. But I'm going to talk about the editing specifically in Honeyboy. Unlike this, there was nothing really in the cinematography that I really wanted to talk about. There are a few sequences in this film that do stick out, and I think the one that comes to mind first and foremost is after him and his dad have that argument at the end when his dad goes to the strip club and he's doing like everything. I think that's an incredibly well edited sequence. I think that when you're editing a film that is incredibly intimate and kind of is carried on the performances and the emotions those evoke, then there's not really that much weight on your shoulders. But there are also several moments in this film where the editing just adds a little extra something. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It doesn't necessarily make the film entirely, but it kind of... First of all, the soundtrack was great. I'm not sure exactly who the composer is, but there's something about the soundtrack that is really nice, and it's used well throughout the film. When you're hopping between Otis at a certain age, at like 22, 23 years old, Otis at 12, 13 years old. Am I right on those ages?
Between like 11 and 13 and 20.
When he's a boy and when he's a young man.
Yeah.
There's nothing too spectacular about that either, besides when, certain things are revealed in the present, and then you go back to the past and you kind of see how he became what he is today. So I'm going to say it. Should I say it?
Say it.
Great editing is editing that you don't notice. I didn't really notice any continuity errors. I didn't notice any errors at all in the editing in this film. I would just say that it did exactly what it needed to do. And it delivered.
Yeah. When you have jump scenes, intercut scenes between, in this case, Otis at the hotel without his father, cut to his father at the strip club, drinking, doing drugs, whatever. There is a responsibility on the editor, the actors, because movies are not always shot in sequence.
Right.
So that could have been Shia LaBeouf's first shot of the movie. Could have been him in the strip club, taking a bump of coke or whatever.
Doing his thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though that comes at the end of the movie. editing it, but cutting between the kid and to the strip club, to the kid and the father at the strip club, and making that story fit, making that story make sense to the viewer. That is great editing.
Yep.
And even though you don't necessarily pick up on that, you don't necessarily notice it. It's great editing.
Yeah.
Because you don't notice it, it makes it great editing.
Right.
That's what we say. That's what we mean when we didn't notice the editing in this movie. No, like we do. It's just
right.
It doesn't. It wasn't awful like our videos are because we don't know how to edit. It's wonderful. It tells a story in editing. I think the editor plays one of the biggest parts in having the story come across on screen because the actors can make the emotions and the story come across, while you're watching it, but the editor is the one who has to make it make sense in the big picture.
Right. No, I definitely agree with that. And there's something also about, because you mentioned how they film scenes out of order sometimes. Sometimes you'll film a scene at the end, at the very beginning of the shooting process. There's something about if you can film a sequence where you filmed a certain part of the sequence at a certain frame of time and a certain part of the sequence at a different frame of time and making it seem sequential, I think that shows really good editing skills. And I also, like I mentioned, there's really good lighting and music editing in this film as well.
You just touched on something I totally forgot about to talk about, but please continue.
Well, I was just saying it was done masterfully, and the main sequence that comes to mind is, of course, that one sequence we keep touching on when after they have that big falling out, the dad goes to the strip club and Otis is back in the motel and stuff. I felt like that sequence was done incredibly well, and
with the music as well.
With the music, and the lighting in the strip club and whatnot,
Yeah, but what you just kind of made me think of, this whole movie, the color correction of this movie is very specific. Because to a person who doesn't make movies or to a person who has never been on a film set and has watched the raw footage compared to the finished footage,
right.
The color correction makes a huge difference
right.
in the way it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, but this movie kind of had almost like the best way I can put it is a filter on it, and it was very kind of depressing. The whole movie has a kind of depressing look to it aesthetically, and that really kind of. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But yeah, the whole movie has a filter on it which invokes a somber attitude, which makes you feel a certain way because art is supposed to evoke a certain emotion in you, and the editor really nailed it with this movie because even in parts.
Editors.
What did I say?
Editor.
Editors.
Plural.
I'm so sorry. No, the editors have a very, very big part to play in the overall emotion that it makes you feel. To a person who does not really know how much work goes into movies, a lot of work, but so much thought and careful consideration goes into every little tiny aspect of filmmaking.
Right.
And I think the editor really did. The editors. I know there's two. The editors really did a really great job.
Right. And I agree. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit more in our overall segment that we do in a second. I think there's something to be said about, and I always felt this way on the set of a student film or on any independent stuff that we've done. There's something to be said about the hard work that gets put into it when you know that a large audience will not be watching this, when you know that you're making a film that won't be a blockbuster, but you still put in the same amount of effort as if a wide audience and a wide variety of people will be watching it. And I think that the editors in this film definitely delivered and did exactly what they were hired to do.
I think there's something to be said about, this is not going to be a blockbuster. Billions of people are not going to watch this movie. this movie is not going to play in every theater in the world, and I'm still going to put every single ounce of myself as an editor into this movie.
Right. No,
And I think the love and the passion for it is still fresh and still there, and it really comes across, especially in independent films or art house films like this.
Definitely. If you're a fan of film in general, you know, and this goes for myself too, I need to watch more independent films.
That's why.
But definitely support independent filmmakers. Definitely support people who are, you know, they're putting in that extra effort, even though the audience doesn't require it.
Even though the payoff is not going to be as great as it would
Right.
for a movie like Inception or the Dark Knight trilogy.
Right, exactly. Which are fantastic films.
Yes.
But for now, I don't have anything else to say about editing. Do you?
Besides the fact that it was pretty good.
To the editors of Honeyboy, thank you for delivering a very honest and truthful film, getting across the message that it was intended to deliver.
Yes. Well done.
Writing!
Final thoughts!
All right, so we want to talk about our final thoughts on the film. We can't do so without, you know, once again talking about Shia LaBeouf. This is his personal. This is his baby, in a sense. I have a feeling. Shia LaBeouf wrote this film. Shia LaBeouf lived this film. Shia LaBeouf brought this film to life. So yeah, we've kind of talked about it through this entire thing. How personal this project is. How, you know, I'm kind of inspired myself when I watched it. You know, about taking these experiences that you've lived through and bringing them to life in a manner that can. There's no disrespect. There's no hard feelings. It's very bringing it back, very honest. And to Shia LaBeouf, I can't really say much about the writing of this film. You just have to watch it to understand how we feel about it.
That's kind of the whole message of this whole video is you just have to watch it to understand why we can't say anything about it.
Right. But this is something that, you know, I can't stress enough. Go watch it. You know, if you're an actor, if you're a director, if you're anything involved with film, watch this. If you enjoy good, honest, truthful storytelling, which is what, in my opinion, the base of cinema in general that's what it is people, we want to go to the movies because sometimes, you know, and I want to say this is my personal feelings. A lot of the times these days you watch a film and it always has an agenda. I like to watch a film with really good storytelling and to be kind of inspired by it when I kind of am done watching it. So that's just where I'm sitting at right now, and this is a film that definitely not only told me a good story, told me an honest story, evoked emotion out of me, but it inspired me in a sense.
Yeah, honestly, I would agree. You know, this movie, I watched this movie, and I have thought, you know, really since, you know, coming back to Atlanta, and I have, you know, thought more and more about me wanting to make a movie about, thank you, me making a movie about my life, my childhood, because, you know, I have a story to tell about my childhood for sure. You know, I think we all do, but there's something very special about actually having the balls to make a very honest, truthful, true story about your childhood.
Very intimate. Something that you wouldn't. It's like a story that you wouldn't really. You'd feel kind of uncomfortable sharing with your friends a lot of the time.
There are parts of my life that I've shared with this guy that I wouldn't necessarily share with really anyone else. And Shia LaBeouf really just kind of said, here you go, now you all know.
Yeah.
Because we hear all too much about child actors that were treated poorly by their parents, or who were kind of had a shitty childhood, you know?
You see it all the time, childhood actors that they're successful as children, and when as they grow, they start to spiral kind of out of control.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think Shia kind of had his spiral downward, but luckily he had something that, like, stopped him and made him progress as an artist, as a person, and he let everyone know that with this movie. And that's not something that you'll see from Lindsay Lohan or from Macaulay Culkin, I think.
Right, which we may down the line.
You know, maybe down the line we will.
Yeah, and I've honestly gotten to the point with, and I had even gotten to the point with Shia before I saw this, because I mentioned how there was a little phase that I went through where I was like, Shia LaBeouf, like, come on, like, this dude's out of his mind, he's losing it. He was a child actor who lost control, just like
that's
all
exactly
of them.
what I thought. It was like just another childhood actor falling from grace.
Right, but as I've gotten older, I've grown to kind of be a little bit more understanding and appreciative of what these people have given us that will kind of stand the test of time.
Yeah, and I think I have thought so many times about like yes, the whole lights and fame, you know, being in the spotlight and being famous is kind of nice when you think about it. It's like, oh man, how nice would it be for like everyone to know your name?
Yeah.
But can you imagine everyone knows every single little itsy bitsy detail about you, about your life? You have no privacy.
Right.
You have zero personal life. And I know for you and for me, our personal lives are like very, very sacred. We like our personal time.
Yeah.
We like our personal lives. We like keeping private stuff private. And as a famous person, you don't really get that. Every little thing you do is scrutinized. Every little thing you do is, you know, looked at with a magnifying glass.
Yeah, you're under a microscope essentially the entire time you're.
And where that comes into play is, you know, most people, that comes into play when you're an adult. Mm-hmm. You have a time in your life where no one knows your name. You have a time in your life where you can keep private. Shia LaBeouf has been in the spotlight since he was like 11 years old.
Right.
He's never really had that private life.
Right.
And I think that's heartbreaking, you know, because I don't know, you know, it's just...
It's easy to think as somebody who's not incredibly famous like us yet. It's easy to think as somebody like us, like, how awesome it would be to have all the perks of being famous and all this and all that. I guarantee you, I can promise you this. There are parts of our lives that child actors are jealous of. The fact that we get to have a normal childhood. We went to, you know, regular public school. We didn't really experience any of the things that a famous childhood actor would have. Not only the perks, but the incredible downsides that come with it as well. As you don't really get to... You can't just date a person. You date a person, the tabloids publish it everywhere. It makes it incredibly public. It makes it harder to break things off with them.
Yeah, and when you have a breakup, it's aired. Your dirty laundry is aired everywhere. And it's
what
not
went wrong? Who fucked up? Like, who did this? Who did that? Like,
and then you get fucking, like, People magazines like... The shocking true story of how so-and-so cheated on so-and-so and stole all their... No.
If you're looking for a true story, don't look to the tabloids. Look to films like this, written by the people that were there, that experienced it, that collaborated.
Well done.
That can truly
tell you
bring
the
across,
true story.
Yeah, the true story of what happened. So, you know, I apologize to Shia LaBeouf for the negative thoughts that I had towards him for years. I will say real quick that I never saw a Shia LaBeouf film, not even the Transformers films. I loved the first Transformers. When I first saw it, it was my favorite movie of all time. Disturbia is incredible.
Yes.
That's one that will definitely break down eventually.
I love Disturbia. We love Disturbia. Disturbia's a great movie.
Yeah. And this movie really shows, I think the most important message this film gets across, these people that we have under this microscope, they have all the same feelings, all the same thoughts, all the same emotions that we have. So, you know, don't be too quick to judge people.
Exactly.
Even the people you see out on the streets, the people you see out at your local gas stations in Atlanta, don't jump to conclusions. You don't know what's happened in these people's lives that has driven them to where they're at now.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I was guilty of this. You know, like, I thought, you know, of child actors as like, wow, you really fucked up your life.
Yeah.
Like, you are the solely responsible for fucking up your life. As opposed to, like, now I see, like, there are so many other forces at work that can fuck up your life that you have no control over. You know, I feel like sometimes you are in a position where you desperately want to be in control, but you're just not because you're famous, and the tabloids will spin your story and your life into a direction that's completely untrue. Right. And that's what I thought with Shia LaBeouf. That's what I did think with Lindsay Lohan, you know? But when you don't have any kind of control over what is said about you, it's impossible not to be depressed, and impossible not to be angry, and impossible not to act out, because you just don't have any control of what people think about you. And so next time you see an actor that did something stupid, yes, that actor did something stupid, but like, why did they do something stupid? What drove them to do that thing? Like, and take a step back and reflect, and don't judge. I mean, and that's a thing that I think has kind of been more prominent, especially in the last like 5 years. It's like, don't be so quick to judge people.
Right.
But seriously, like, I've been guilty of this. I know a lot of people have been guilty of this. Do not be so quick to say you are solely responsible for the way your life has been. Because yes, like, you do have a certain amount of control, but when the media has so much control over the whole world, it's impossible for people not to view you in a false light.
Right. And, you know, the last thing I want to say on this topic is I've done things in my life. I've said certain things that, you know, in the past, if I had been under a microscope like these childhood actors have been, like Shia LaBeouf and Lindsay Lohan and anybody involved with that sort of generation of childhood actors, if I would have been under that microscope, I would have been canceled immediately. I can say that with utmost certainty. I would have disliked them. I would have looked at this and been like, oh, 10 years ago he said this? Oh, no, I don't want to support them anymore for this. You know, but I've done things that me, myself, right now, looking back, I would have canceled me entirely. Yeah. We're all human. We all mess up. We all have our own stories to tell.
Absolutely. I've done things that I'm not proud of. Like, there are things in my life that I look back on now, you know, having grown into the person that I am now. Yeah. You know, looking back, you know, 10 years ago, I'm just like...
Yeah, and I knew...
Go ahead.
I knew you 10 years ago, and I definitely hate him now for everything that he did back then.
I was a really shitty person when I was 14. And when I started high school, no one liked me.
Especially not me.
Which is why we're still friends 11 years later. Get the fuck off me.
Acquaintances.
We're not even that.
Colleagues.
And I think that's true with everybody. We've all done stuff that we're not proud of. Mm-hmm. We've all done stuff that we like look back on now, and having learned, having progressed in life, where we're just like, yikes, that was not the best. I've learned from those mistakes, and I will aim to do better, and that's exactly what Shia LaBeouf has done with this movie. I think it's kind of like an apology, or kind of an acceptance of what his father put him through, and said, I forgive you. It's a forgiving film.
That's exactly what it is.
I'm not even saying that is exactly the word I've been searching for this entire time. The phrase, a forgiving film of his father.
I don't know how to put anything better than that. That is the impression that this film intends to leave, I would say. So I want to give my overall impression of this film first viewing. That's okay?
Yeah.
First viewing of this film, and also you viewed this film for the first time not too long ago either, so I'm interested to see what yours is, although I know that we both definitely took away a positive impression from this. That's the message that I took away from this. It's kind of a commentary on cancel culture these days, if you think about it. You know how people are canceled so easily? They'll because people like to dig back like 10, 15 years on people's Twitters, find little details, little tweets that they said, and use that as an excuse to cancel them as we are. We all grow, we all change. I know me from last year is a completely different person than I am right now. So that's just something to keep in mind. I feel like I want to make a huge change on this sort of topic eventually. I hope that this is like the seed that is planted, because it's something that does mean a lot to me. But I will say, overall, first impressions of this film, and I'm not just saying this because he showed it to me and because me and him have very similar tastes, this is a very important film.
It is.
This is a very impactful and emotional film that I would definitely recommend to anybody who... I would definitely recommend it to anybody. I'm going to say that right now. Take away what you will from the film. This is what I took away from it. Don't be so quick to judge. You don't know what somebody's gone through. And at the end of the day, everybody has their own stories.
Yeah, trauma makes people act out in different ways.
Right.
And I mean, like, it's just, even though I would say there are things in my life that have, like, caused me to be a little bit jaded. There are things in my life that have made me jaded to certain things. Also, Harvey Weinstein definitely deserved to be canceled. Fuck that guy.
Oh, yeah, wait.
Jeffrey Epstein,
no.
there are certain people who absolutely deserve to be canceled.
Sure.
Like, fuck those people.
Yeah.
Sure. But, like, when someone does something that, like, they fucked up, they made a mistake, kind of, like, take a second and think, what has that person gone through that has made them so messed up? Right. You know, that caused them to mess up. Because, I mean, no one wants to be a shitty person.
No. Sometimes
things just happen that make them do shitty things. And I've done shitty things to people. I've said shitty things to people. And I feel bad about those things for sure. But, you know, like, I have looked back, I have reflected about those experiences, and I've said, yeah, I messed up, I did something stupid, and I have grown and I've learned from that, and I will do better.
Yeah. And
I think that's what everyone needs to take away from this film, is that people will do better. People have the ability to, just because you turn 25 doesn't mean you stop growing. Right. Yeah, you've reached adulthood, but you don't stop growing.
Right. You grow throughout your entire life.
Exactly. You learn.
I've met people who are in their 40s who have made drastic life changes.
Exactly.
Shall we give our ratings? All right. On the count of 3?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 8.0. Oh! Probably the biggest discrepancy we've had in ratings, I would say.
Yeah, up until now, we've been getting closer and closer and closer, and now
we were the same on Usual Suspects.
Yeah, but
that's a given. I would give it an 8.8 because an 8.0 because of the impact that it definitely had on me, the impact that I think it can have on an entire generation, an entire community. But I want to think about rewatch value. It's probably not something I'll be rewatching anytime soon. I will say that. But that's not to say anything negative about the film. It's just because it's one of those films where it's kind of heavy and it kind of sits with you. And a viewing every couple of years will kind of refresh you on exactly what the message is supposed to be delivered to you.
I think I gave it a 9 point... What did I give it, a 9.6?
9.4.
9.4. Wow, I can't even remember what I gave it. I think I gave it a 9.4 is because it really kind of opened my eyes to just, not that I've done, like, anything overly shitty to someone, but, like, it has opened my eyes to me viewing people who have done shitty things.
Sure.
And has made me reflect back on my life and really made me think about what I did do that could have been better or could have been nicer or could have been that I wish I had done differently. I'll say that. So this movie, it made me reflect, and I think having a movie make me feel that way, having that kind of awakening, that epiphany in me, it really means a lot to me, and I just love this movie. I think this movie is great. I think this movie is wonderful. Rewatch value is definitely very low because it's so emotional, and
it's kind of like,
I like feel-good movies. I don't like movies that make me, kind of like sit down and make me snot a string of snot 10,000 billion trillion gazillion feet long. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just...
It was a long string of snot.
It's a nice... It's a nice catharsis.
Yeah.
And cathartic movies are good to watch maybe once a year.
Right. I would agree with that.
I had a big awakening in myself when I watched this movie, and that I feel like this movie has really done a number on me. So I think that's why I gave it such a high rating.
Right.
Because I really appreciate what this movie has done for me personally.
Right. And I agree with that. Rewatch value, I will definitely be rewatching this film, just not as frequently as a lot of the other films that we talked about. So before we name what is next, shall we raise a toast to Honeyboy?
Yes, please.
To Honeyboy, to Shia LaBeouf.
Thank you.
Thank you for telling us such an intimate and truthful and inspiring story.
Kind of like brutally honest. You know?
Brutally honest, without a doubt. Yeah. To you.
To you. What are we doing next week, bro?
All right. So, watching this film actually kind of inspired me to pick this next one that we're doing. Once again, we will not be doing another blockbuster. We will not be doing another one that we've probably watched about 1 billion times together, but we have watched together several times. This is a film that I feel is driven mainly by the performances. So I'm kind of interested to see how, when we watch it again, how we view the different aspects. We first watched this in college, and I feel like we're going to have a ton to say about this. I don't want to give any more clues.
I legit don't know what you're going to say.
I'm excited for it then. The next film we will be reviewing is Whiplash. And
okay.
This is one that I've been itching to rewatch this. It's kind of a selfish reason because I just wanted to rewatch it for so long
I have
at
too,
this
honestly,
point.
yeah.
So I'm excited to watch it again before we do the next breakdown. But honestly, at the same time, I have so much to say about it already.
That's not quite my tempo.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's this is a film that it's one of the films that we continuously reference.
Yeah.
But that we don't watch on repeat all the time, kind of like John Wick or The Dark Knight, or because it's not a feel-good movie. This is another film that I feel like is driven mainly by the performances.
Yes.
But we will have some in-depth analysis for it next time around. Other than that, I don't want to say much about Whiplash right now, besides the fact that I'm super stoked to talk about it.
I gotta say, Whiplash is not a movie that like immediately came to my mind when we came up with the idea for breakdowns.
But it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a great breakdown because there's so much to say about it.
So much to say about it.
So much.
Yeah, especially when it comes to, I mean, you got directing, you got acting, you got...
Go and pour the rest of the bottle. Don't actually, oh my.
You want to just put the bottle? I already got his... Alright, so... Next week! Tune in for... Our breakdown of Whiplash. We're breaking down Whiplash.
We're doing the Princess Diaries, and you're gonna like
You're excited for it. I know you are. I can see you shaking in your boots. This Angel's Envy is hitting hard as hell.
Because it's so damn good. As you can see, this bottle was completely full.
Seriously, this is probably the closest...
And now it's like 2 inches full.
Alright, so for now... We've already raised a toast to Honeyboy. We still have a little bit of whiskey left in our glasses. One more toast to Honeyboy?
One more toast for just an incredible story.
I'm down with that. Which is what the whole point of cinema is supposed to be.
Yes!
Ah! Thought you were about to finish it with me.
Alright, this is DK
KS
Productions signing off on Honeyboy. Join us next week for Whiplash.